So I got to tell you, last night, I was actually doing a lecture at USC, and I got a call from one of our producers. And
Diddy.
Apologies to the students that I bailed, but we broke a story that Diddy got arrested last night.
Arrested last night in New York City by the feds.
And I got to tell you, Charles, I have never read 14 pages that contained so much
many allegations.
Shocking information and allegations. Diddy, among other things, he has been accused of sex trafficking, engaging in a conspiracy to foster prostitution, racketeering, kidnapping, narcotics offenses, arson, bribery. That is the beginning.
And the feds lay this all out. That they say that basically his organization, his company, which they refer to as the Combs Enterprise, which certainly sounds more like a
mob,
like a mob
yeah.
Outfit, that it existed mainly to fuel his desires, often his sexual desires. And they lay out in detail a lot of those sexual desires in this indictment.
So one of the centerpieces, and we've talked about this before, are these freak-off parties that Diddy hosted. And, you know, we all knew...
That's the allegation. And remember, Cassie that first came to light in Cassie's lawsuit, where she talked about these freak-off parties that he would have at hotels she said, in Atlanta, Miami, L.A., and New York.
And they were essentially orgies. But the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, who filed this, laid this out at a press conference and specifically addressed the freak-offs.
The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims.
Now, they say they found those recordings of the freak-offs during the raids on his homes in Miami and here in LA.
Which opens up a whole Pandora's box of who is in this. One of the things they are alleging, and this is the prostitution charge, which is that Diddy would bring male porn stars across state lines to participate in these freak-offs and essentially victimize, I mean, that's the way they're putting it, some of the women who were pressured to be part of this.
Yeah, the feds are alleging, Harvey, a full-scale criminal enterprise here. They say that Diddy was conspiring with many people, mostly his employees, to engage not just in drawing people out across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, forcible coercion of sexual acts, forced drugging and raping of women, guns, all sorts of crimes, and
drugs,
it's all part of a criminal.
Drugs.
In
you heard
huge quantities
Damian
of drugs.
The U.S. attorney talk about these.
GHB, oxy, ketamine, which he mentioned, cocaine,
huge quantities of
MDMA.
drugs.
I mean, just really, Charles, this 14 pages is
They
shocking.
packed a
It's
lot
shocking.
in those 14 pages, and it is now, you know, Diddy's, we should say, his side. His attorneys have said that they're disappointed. I always find that weird when they say we're disappointed that they decided to pursue this. Well, of course you're disappointed they decided to pursue it. But in court today, Diddy did plead not guilty to all the charges, and his attorneys say he is innocent, and they're going to fight this in court.
So we actually got his lawyer going into court, and not only said he was not guilty, said he didn't do it.
He came here to surrender at a time agreeable to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then they arrested him last night. I spent the evening with him. I was with him until about 1 o'clock. His spirits are good. He's confident. He is dealing with this head on, the way he's dealt with every challenge in his life, and he's not guilty. He's innocent of these charges. He's going to plead not guilty, obviously. He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might and the full confidence of his lawyers. And I expect a long battle. with a good result for Mr. Combs.
Do you think he'll be released?
I'm going to fight like hell to get him released, and he should be released.
So when we broke this story, what happened was Diddy was staying at the
Park Hyatt
Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. He apparently knew this was coming.
Yes, he's been preparing for this. And just hours before his arrest, was walking around the streets of New York,
Talking to fans,
taking selfies with them. He and his son, Christian King Combs, were walking around talking to fans. So he seemed like he didn't have a care in the world. He'd been there earlier in the week. Over the weekend, was in Central Park hanging out. So they have said, his team has said, look, he came to New York voluntarily because he was cooperating.
So let's get into the fact that the judge denied Diddy bail.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
Big deal. The judge basically said that he is going to be behind bars until his trial begins, whenever that is. The judge said that
and by the way, that could be a year from now.
That prosecutors had shown enough evidence that he was either a flight risk and or a danger to others and potentially witnesses as well, because the feds
say he tampered with witnesses.
That he's tampered with witnesses in the past.
Now, when we broke this story last night, we said the plan was for him to surrender today.
Right.
And now we know why they swooped in last night instead.
Well, at least according to Diddy's attorney.
But it makes sense.
Yes, Diddy's attorney outside court, after the judge denied him bail, suggested that the reason that the feds went and arrested Diddy at his hotel room last night is so that they could then go into court today and demand that he be held without bail.
Because if he showed up, it would seem he's not a flight risk.
That he's not a flight risk. He actually went down and surrendered, but that didn't happen, and Diddy's attorney thinks that was all part of the plan so that he would be held without bail.
So he is pled not guilty. There was a little bit of victim shaming in the court.
Yeah, there was a part where they started discussing the indictment. There's a part of the indictment where, as we said, they refer to victim one. Which clearly seems to be Cassie. And Diddy's attorneys did argue that it's like they were trying to explain away what we saw in that video, in that horrific video in the hotel hallway, and said that Cassie was going through, although they referred to as victim one, was going through Diddy's phone and discovered he had another girlfriend and got mad and hit him in the head with his cell phone.
And the intimation
and then
is
left with his clothing. So
and the intimation is, and that's why he did what he did.
Right. Trying to explain away that.
As Dan Rather said, that dog don't hunt.
No, that seems like a really questionable decision.
So look, we kind of knew this, but it's very clear. Cassie is their star witness.
Yeah.
Cassie is their star witness.
Yeah, and I think this goes directly to the conspiracy and directly to the long criminal enterprise here. Remember, Cassie happened 8 years ago. I'm not even sure you could prosecute him for those crimes against her. But
well, the kidnapping you can.
The kidnapping you can, right? Just not the abuse, not the battery, absolutely.
Right.
But that all goes to a grand scheme that he's been allegedly been perpetrating for a long, long time, and all of this is evidence of that scheme.
Speaking of a long, long time, Aubrey O'Day has talked about this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And she told us something today after the arrest.
Yes, she said she feels vindicated. I never thought I would see this day. We all buried this inside of us in order to be able to keep going. And not just me, but victims you don't even know yet. We are all processing what that type of vindication can actually feel like now. Every conversation I've had with victims last night has been beyond moving on all levels.
So let's get into just one other thing quickly, which is the arson claim. And it seems to align with the Kid Cudi
allegation, right, that Diddy had someone blow up Kid Cudi's car. In the indictment, they refer to a Molotov cocktail being thrown at this vehicle and it blowing up. Cassie is the one who made the Kid Cudi allegation in her lawsuit. And you remember at the time, Cudi, his reaction to it was to say nothing, but in a very coy way.
Yeah.
Had no comment. So.
Barbie from Boston. I just think given the circumstances, it's not outrageous to believe that P. Diddy might try and flee, and factoring in witness intimidation as well. I think there's a lot of reasons that he should not go on bail. And obviously, that was understood by the judge.
Well, there is actually going to be, Diddy's attorneys are appealing the no bail decision. They'll be back in court tomorrow.
Look, he has a lot of civil lawsuits. Those will be put on hold for the criminal trial, but that doesn't mean the people in those lawsuits who filed them would not be testifying.
Right. And it does seem that a lot of the allegations we've seen in those lawsuits are being referred to in the indictment.
Absolutely.